Okay.
By the way, Rabbi, it was very well done the way you grabbed control back of the.
Yes, yes. It is turns out to be a useful skill. Uh, so we are going to continue our discussion of the concept of Mamzerut, of who is a Mamzer, a illegitimate child in Jewish law. We began this last week, and depending on how much time we have tonight, we may get into the question, a very interesting other legal issue, which I think we started discussing last week, about artificial insemination and Jewish law. And so anyway, I find this interesting, and evidently you guys
I think it's fascinating.
You guys keep coming back. So okay. So we actually read the first page of this article last time. This sort of came out of a discussion of Jewish divorce. And so I actually have on the screen what we read last time, but I just wanted to point out some issues. But before we get back into it, a mamzer is the offspring of a biblically forbidden union for which the progenitors are liable to extirpation, which is, I think, is karet, to be cut off from the people, with an exception for a menstruate woman. So let's see. The practical bearing of this ruling is that it excludes from defamation a child born out of wedlock, and which child is often wrongly called a bastard under common law. And it may well be under Christian thought and common law that status exists. That's not something I particularly know anything about.
Well, it's a forbidden union, according to the way the Catholics think.
You're talking about being born out of wedlock.
Yes.
Yeah, but I don't think they're taking that direction from Jewish law. I could be wrong about that. And according to the Shulchan Aruch, and this is sort of an interesting one, a new line of mamzerim can only be produced by two Jews, but the product of a non-Jew and a mamzeret, a female mamzer, is, oh, that's interesting, is a mamzer, which actually relates to a question that we're going to be talking about Wednesday night, which is who is a Jew? And the actual legal reason why it follows the mother's line, which is also another interesting bit of legal analysis. Two categories of mamzerim: a child born of incest, defined in the Bible, but an incestuous relationship between one or two non-Jews cannot produce a mamzer. And this, I would think, would be, like a child and a parent, where the one parent is not Jewish, or an aunt or uncle, a union forbidden in the Torah, but if one party is not Jewish, this may be awful in our sight, but it doesn't produce a mamzer. And if the product of the union were to convert, they would be the equal of any Jew. So if you're a non-Jew and you convert, you are not a mamzer, irrespective of your birth history. Bryce.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, is it strictly blood as defining the incestuous relationship, or let's say that a family, a Jewish family, adopted a Jewish child, all right, and then an incestuous relationship took place between the adopted child and one of the parents, and there was an offspring. Would that child be a mamzer or not?
Yeah, the answer is I don't know. I believe in the case of a stepbrother or stepsister, even though there is no blood relation, that could produce a mamzer. But again, this is not, a subject on which I am extraordinarily knowledgeable. I think that may be addressed in this article.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You are welcome. So would someone like to read? We're now at the top of page 2. I trust you can see the article. Yes. Okay.
I could do it. Or go ahead. Go ahead. Henry, you raised your hand.
Yeah, go ahead, Henry.
A child born of a married Jewish woman, adultery is a mamzer. The child of a single woman and a man she could lawfully have married is not a mamzer. It is irrelevant if the man is married or not. If one of the partners is not Jewish, the child is not a mamzer. Any child born to a married woman, even if she is known to have been unfaithful, is presumed to be her husband's, unless she is so promiscuous that such a presumption becomes unsupportable, or if she enters a public relationship with another man.
So
A
this
child
also,
born,
hold on a second. This
go
also
ahead.
falls back on the idea that certainly in biblical Judaism, a man can have more than one wife. And again, this is probably something I should check carefully. But if you have a unmarried woman having sexual relations with a married man, let's say they're both Jewish, I believe, strictly speaking, under Jewish law, that's not considered adultery. Although I would say in the Reform world, it is considered adultery. And so, but for the purposes of Mamzerut, and by the way, the Reform world doesn't recognize Mamzerut, so we don't deal with this at all. It would not be considered, the child would not be considered a Mamzer.
Rabbi, what does
Yes.
it mean, public relationship with
So I
another
often
man?
say, you know, I think we may have discussed this last time too, but I actually can't remember. In Jewish law, there is a common law marriage. If two Jews live together in the eyes of the community, some Jewish legal authorities would say they are married and they would have to get a Jewish divorce to separate. So as I always describe this actually to a few chuckles at weddings and talking with my couples as they are getting married, if the couple is living together in the eyes of the community, this doesn't mean sneaking off to Motel 6. But if if Raphael and Shana are living together in the same household, and Shana gets pregnant and has a child, and it's clear to the community that she's having Raphael's child, yet she never got a divorce from her last husband, that child could be ruled to be a mamzer. Alan.
Where is this written?
Alan. You're muted, Alan.
That was me, Rabbi.
No, I hear you, but Alan has his hand up, and he is speaking, and now we can.
I was muted. Does it matter whether the child was born before if they get married and they had pregnancy and they were not married, does whether the child was born after they were married, or does it matter?
Their marriage is irrelevant. The issue is, under strict Jewish law, if the woman is married to someone else.
Okay. Thank you.
And Jay, the answer to the question, where is it written? This is rabbinic law. It's not in the Bible. I don't know how much detail is in the Talmud, but it's rabbinic. It is not Torah.
Okay.
Okay. So, Henry, I think we're at a child born within 12 months.
Okay. The child born within 12 months of a woman's most recent meeting with her husband is presumed to be legitimate, since Jewish law provides that in rare cases, a pregnancy can last that long. However, if more than 9 months have elapsed and she is known to have been unfaithful, then the presumption does not apply. Modern assisted reproductive technology has complicated the issue. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein ruled that if a married woman is inseminated by sperm from another man, the child is not a mamzer, since it did not result from an act of adultery. Rabbi Joel Teitelbaum, disagreed and ruled that since the child is known to be that of a man other than her husband, it is a mamzer.
So again, this is going to lead to good old-fashioned conventional artificial insemination. Say a man is sterile, can't produce sperm, and the couple want to have a child, so they use artificial insemination. So she is inseminated with the sperm of another man. The question is that adultery? And if it is adultery, then the child would be a mamzer. So we have at least two legal authorities in the Orthodox world disagreeing on the answer to that.
I just want to make a quick comment on that,
Yep.
Rabbi, and that is that it is fortunate that medical records are not public. All right, so that someone can go ahead and have artificial insemination without having to tell the rabbi.
Yeah, so if you don't care and you're not running this by your rabbi, clearly under civil law, there's no issue. But if you're Orthodox, then you don't want to commit adultery, even if you're doing it for noble reasons. So Jewish law is important for those people who are committed to obeying Jewish law. And my understanding, and we're going to actually read an article by Elliot Dorff, who's the leading legal mind in the conservative movement on this very subject. But you're right. I mean, don't ask, don't tell, and nobody's going to know. But if you are a person committed to Jewish law, you don't want to commit adultery. Even you could argue that this is technical adultery. And I do agree that it is fortunate that that these records are confidential. Let's continue.
The status of an abandoned child
I
was
guess it's,
determined by,
yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to try and pronounce it, but a Sufi, I guess.
Okay. Was determined by the state in which it was found. If there were indications that the foundling had been abandoned due to the parents being unable to support it, then halakhically the child would not be a mamzer. However, if the unknown parents could have supported the child, it was regarded as potentially being a mamzer. A child whose mother is known, but not the father, was known as silent one,
Shatuki.
and fell into the same category as a foundling. This status, however, could be changed if the mother knew and revealed the identity of the father. The mamzer status is hereditary. A child of a mamzer, whose mother or father, is also a mamzer. However, since these rules are regarded as applying only to Jews, and since traditional rabbinical law regards Jewish status as only transmitted through the mother, the child of a male mamzer and a non-Jewish woman cannot be a mamzer. However, the child of a female mamzer and a non-Jewish man is a mamzer.
Okay. Cheryl.
What if a mamzer converts to Christianity for a period of time and then decides, since they are then technically a non-Jew, and at a later date to become Jewish? What do you do?
So I would say you're on the right track, but wrong train. So the issue is
Pick me. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
the issue is
Wait a minute.
the problem is once you're
Pick
in
Bryce, pick
once you're Jewish, you can't get out. So you can convert to Christianity, but under Jewish law, you're still technically a Jew. Bryce?
I was going to say that why don't you have the rabbis question whoever it is, question their actual Judaism based upon questionable great historical parentage, and
I think we talked about this, and it was even brought up. I think Alan pointed out in this wonderful show, which I think is on Netflix, called, I think it's The Beauty Queen of Jerusalem, a case exactly like this, where what the rabbis will do. So I say you're on the right track, Cheryl. What the rabbi will do is exactly what Bryce was saying, is try and determine that the person was not Jewish to begin with by casting doubt on his or her lineage. And if you're not Jewish, you can't be a mamzer. So you're fine. You're just not Jewish. Now, we'll go to the mikvah, and we can quickly make you Jewish. Okay, we're up to marriage restrictions. Henry, you want to continue?
Sure. The biblical rule against certain people becoming part of the congregation of the Lord was interpreted in the Talmud as a prohibition against ordinary Jews marrying such people. Although the biblical passage includes in this up to the 10th generation of the descendants of a Mamzer, classical rabbis interpreted this as an idiom, meaning forever. Thus, in traditional Jewish law, a Mamzer and his or her descendants are not allowed to marry an ordinary non-Mamzer Jewish spouse.
Yeah, so I'll call on Bethany in a second, and I can't remember if it was in this article or not, but there is some reference in the Bible. Yeah, there it is, that yeah, a Mamzer shall not enter the congregation of the Lord, even to the 10th generation, he shall not enter the congregation of the Lord. So there it is, Deuteronomy 23:20. So I stand corrected from how I responded to Jay. Of course, it's going to be the rabbis that are going to come up with all these very specific rules about what exactly we mean by a Mamzer. The Bible doesn't come up with a clear definition. But because the Bible makes a very significant proclamation, the rabbis are going to be very focused and very concerned with deciding who is a Mamzer. Bethany.
What percentage of people are Mamzers?
Oh,
That outwardly, is this really,
yeah. So I think it's vanishingly small. And of course, in the good old days, which is up to the invention of the computer, you would have paper records of who is a Mamzer. I don't know whether or not, if someone is declared a Mamzer, this goes into some sort of a rabbinic record in in Israel, in the Orthodox world, which would keep the person from marrying. And I say that because there are, kind of lists in Israel about who is a acceptable rabbi to serve on a conversion baked in. So, but my sense is, and I can't remember if this article gets into it, that it's vanishingly small. I'm just starting to do some research on this, on the situation of Ethiopian Jews, because there was a question about whether they were authentically Jewish. And if we accept them as authentically Jewish, is there a suspicion that they may all be Mamzerim because they were basically disconnected from the Jewish world before the Talmud? Therefore, no divorce could have been a rabbinic get. So that's a controversy, and I'm starting to do some research on that. Again, I find it interesting, but my sense is it's very small. Less.
Would Moses' children been considered Mamzer since his wife was Moabite?
No, if your wife is not Jewish, it has no bearing on whether your children are Mamzers. It has a bearing on whether your children are Jewish. The definition of a Mamzer is a child born of incest or adultery. So Moses' children wouldn't have been born of incest or adultery. And by that, if that were the case, Sarah wasn't born Jewish, so and neither was Abraham for that matter. So we have all kinds of interesting problems. But Mamzerut is the child born of a forbidden marriage, not a Jew and a non-Jew.
Thank you.
So Noah and his family would have been in trouble.
Yeah, but nowhere is it suggested that Noah was Jewish.
Oh, okay,
by the way.
okay. That's how you guys get around this stuff, isn't it?
What do you mean, you guys, Bethany? You're in, you can't get out. I just want to remind you of that.
Rabbi.
Oh,
Rabbi.
rabbis. Okay, yes. Yes. Rabbis, yes. You guys, yes. Yeah. And 10 generations from Adam to Noah, 10 generations from Noah to Abraham. So Noah is fully 10 generations before Abraham. Alan.
You may have answered this, but the question is on the subject of the mother being Jewish. So the woman is not Jewish until she converts. If she's converted to Judaism and then has a child in this conditions of Mamzer, then the fact she's converted her Jewishness is still becomes relevant, right?
So you're saying a woman who converts to Judaism and then commits adultery,
Right.
her child would be Jewish.
Would be, well, it could be a Mamzer.
Would be Mamzer. It would be a Jewish Mamzer. Yes.
So the convert would apply. This subject applies to converts, is what I'm saying. Okay.
I think the only issue relating to, I should know this, but I don't. I think the only difference between a convert and a born Jew is I think the convert can't marry a high priest, which actually hasn't been an issue for 2,000 years. Erwin. Erwin.
Yes, I would like to know if the law prohibits the information about the sperm and an egg. How does the Jewish law or the community, the Orthodox community, know that the sperm was from a Christian or a non-Christian person?
It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter where the sperm comes from for any purpose.
I see. Thank you.
The only issue which we were discussing is if the woman is married to someone else, is the act of insemination considered adultery or not? And my understanding of Jewish law is it's intercourse which creates adultery, not insemination.
So,
Unless
Rabbi,
you're a rabbi and you disagree.
Sorry, Les, you were going to say?
yeah, so if a woman has an affair with, say, a non-Jew or whatever, but he doesn't inseminate her, and then her husband does, they're not going to know who the father was. But because she had an affair, then it's assumed it's a Mamzer?
No, so that's actually what was discussed in the article. And they were saying that if a woman is living with her husband and she has a child, it is presumed that the child is the child of her husband, unless there is overwhelming evidence that that's not the case, which raises the question, and I don't know the answer to this question. Suppose you do a DNA test. Let's say you have a Jewish woman, Jewish husband, and the woman becomes pregnant and has a child, and they do a paternity test, and it turns out the child is not the child of her husband.
Okay.
Has she committed adultery, and is the child a Mamzer? My guess is yes, but I would be guessing.
Well, how would she be having a child if she didn't have an affair with some man?
No, that's what I'm. But that's what I'm saying is, suppose she did. If she's fooling around on the side, and she becomes pregnant, unless there is clear and compelling evidence that the child is not from her husband, the child is presumed to be kosher, not Mamzer. But if there's clear and compelling evidence, and the text discuss the case where she hasn't seen her husband in 12 months, he's off to war or something. That would be, according to this article, clear and compelling evidence. Other clear and compelling evidence would obviously be a DNA test. And I don't know if I don't recall that this article discusses that case, but that would be an interesting possibility. Bryce.
I wonder if DNA would actually be an acceptable piece of evidence, at least at this point in time. I think, at least from what I've been able to pick up, and you can certainly correct me on this, that the rabbinate tends to be fairly conservative in what they interpret as evidence. And that rather than saying, oh, a DNA test happened, they're more likely to say, was she witness to doing this?
Yeah, it's a very good question.
I think that's more like, that's just the feeling I get, that they're not going to just trust the technological implications.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but there are lots of Jews involved in technology, and there is nothing in Orthodoxy that restricts that. If I had to guess, but it would purely be a guess. I mean, it'd be interesting to search that. I can just see Cheryl doing that right now. Sorry, Cheryl.
Good. Thank you, Cheryl.
But you need two witnesses.
So wait a minute. So what's the specific question you want me to research?
So yeah. Well, anyway, let's not worry about it right now. The question that was raised is, suppose you have a Jewish woman who has a child, and then for various reasons, maybe in connection with a divorce, there's a paternity test given to the child, to see if the child's DNA matches the husband's DNA, and it does not. Would the child be considered a mamzer? I don't know that specific case, but I bet it's in Jewish law in responsa. And the
But
two
if it's the
witnesses would
offspring of a
hold on, let me
What-
finish.
Okay.
The two witnesses would be witnesses to the DNA test, not to the act of intercourse, unless she could claim it was through artificial insemination. I mean, it would be an interesting legal issue. I don't know the answer. Yeah.
Well, what if the adultery took place with a non-Jew?
If the adult,
See if it's
if
the
the adult,
offspring
I
of a
think the child is,
non-Jew.
yeah, the Jewish or non-Jewish status of the
Mhm.
father is irrelevant in traditional Jewish law.
Okay.
No, that's right.
I think that's correct. Now this is some detailed Jewish legal issues, and you will be astonished to learn that they rarely come up in my day-to-day rabbinate. Okay, so Henry, do you want to continue? I think we're at the restriction, but
That's what I
yeah,
remember.
okay, good.
The restriction does not prevent a mamzer from marrying another mamzer, nor from marrying a convert to Judaism
Oh,
or a non-Jewish slave. However, foundlings suspected of being mamzerim were not so free. They were neither permitted to marry a mamzer nor even to marry another foundling.
Hmm.
This interpretation is not universally shared, with Matthew Poole interpreting the congregation of the Lord as being the Israelite government.
Ah,
okay, social status.
Social status of the mamzerim. Although in many historical societies, illegitimacy of birth was a quality which could make a person somewhat of an outcast, this was not the official attitude of Judaism. Apart from the marriage restrictions, a mamzer is not officially considered a second-class citizen and is supposed to be treated with as much respect as other Jews. For example, the Mishnah teaches that a learned mamzer should take precedence over an ignorant high priest of Israel. The meaning of take precedence is not explicitly explained by the Mishnah, nor by the Talmud in general, although the preceding part of the Mishnah uses it to refer to the priority in which people should be rescued from danger, while other parts of the Mishnah use the phrase to refer to the priority in which people should receive aliyot.
Aliyot, that means to be called to the Torah. That's what you're going to be doing roughly 2 months.
All right.
Bryce, I assume your hand is not intentionally
Oh,
raised.
sorry, my apologies. Yes.
Okay, Henry, would you like to continue?
Okay. Rabbis in the Talmud and those in the Middle Ages saw fit to spell out that, aside from in questions of marriage, a mamzer should be treated as an ordinary Jew. The Talmud insists that a mamzer should be considered as an ordinary relative for the purpose of inheritance, including levirate marriage. Maimonides and Joseph ben Ephraim, Cairo, see fit to repeat this and confirm that a mamzer can serve as a judge. Similarly, Tosafot insists that it is permissible for a mamzer to become a king.
Oh, this is interesting. Let's read one more line and then I'll call on Al.
The status of mamzerim could even be relinquished, either by the mamzer marrying a servant or the mamzer becoming a servant themselves, with their status being immediately relinquished upon their release.
Yeah. My guess is a lot of these laws, are medieval. I don't know what modern orthodoxy says about them. Alan.
So as long as we're into trivia ad nauseum, my question is about the Kohen. So if the father of the child that had adultery with this woman that causes the child to be considered a mamzer, what does the Kohen status go with the child?
So you're talking about a Jewish Kohen impregnates a Jewish woman married to someone else.
Right.
Yeah, ask
And-
your local Chabad rabbi, or
So-
we're about to enter.
Dr. Google.
And of course, when you ask your local Chabad rabbi, you just say you're asking for a friend, right? You want to make that clear.
Yeah, of course. No, but the point is that being a Kohen has a certain status, right?
Yes.
And it
Not
might
in Reform
be,
Judaism, but yes,
no, but
absolutely.
in the way in which we're
Yes,
discussing
yes,
it, it
yes.
occurs to me
And
that
I,
it
and, I,
could,
and I don't know the answer to the question.
yeah, okay.
Somebody ought to keep count. When I get up to 10 answers, I don't know the questions. I don't know the answer to. We should terminate the session.
You all get an ice cream cone then?
Okay. Would someone else like to continue reading modern investigations into Mamzer status?
Love to.
Okay.
Modern investigations into Mamzer status. Orthodox Judaism. The principal approach in Orthodox Judaism is to require strict evidentiary standards for Mamzer status, sufficiently strict that proof of the existence of Mamzer status is hard to develop and generally does not arise. Typically, it is impossible to prove either that a prior marriage ever existed or that a child was born of relations outside that marriage. Orthodox rabbis always allow the suspect child the benefit of the doubt in this matter. This usually leads to the conclusion that at the time of a person's birth, their parents were married, or that the person is the child of a man and a woman who were married to each other when the child was conceived. An example
Actually, let me make one comment, which is something, I remember from my class on Jewish law, which is in Western law, the role of a judge is to be a disinterested officiant, namely to apply in a neutral way the laws to the facts of the case. I was taught that in Jewish law, the judge, and all rabbis are actually, I'm looking right up at my ordination certificate, we are judges. The role of the judge is to do that, yes, but also to be God's representative in making a decision. So that sort of speaks to the part of this that Bryce just read, that to give the benefit of the doubt. If there's a doubt whether the person's a mamzer or not a mamzer, the child will be ruled not a mamzer. I just find that interesting.
And what's interesting about that is that either they were married when the child was born or married at the other end.
Actually, it says they were married when the child was conceived in the last line.
Or married when the child was when the child was born, the parents were married, or the child the parents were married when the child was conceived.
Okay.
Yeah, it's both of them.
Yeah, I see it in the article, and I actually.
What they're I guess what they're saying is, hey, if you were married when you were born, it doesn't matter whether, nothing matters what happened before. Or if the parents gone, if the one of them skedaddled, well, if the father skedaddled, but they were married when they were conceived, then there we go. I think it's a very liberal interpretation.
Yes, it is a liberal interpretation, and the way I would conceive, you should pardon the expression, of the logic is, you have a couple that is married, and the woman is 8 or 9 months pregnant. Now the question is, I think that's where what you just reread and quoted really applies. They're going to make the presumption that the child is the child of the husband, and it wasn't an adulterous union that created
exactly
and I have officiated, I will say, I think I may have mentioned it. One of my funnier lines was to have a woman who was like 8 months pregnant at the wedding, and with the advance permission to use this little bit of humor, when I talked about the couple, living together and creating the marriage in that way, I stated very soberly that this couple does not need to prove to actually symbolically live together at the conclusion of the wedding. They have proved me that they have satisfied that particular requirement. Alan.
Although this is a little bit of a semantic reversal. Something Bryce said earlier, which felt like this applies, which he says rabbis tend to make decisions in a conservative, in a,
Yeah.
say, generous way. And that seems to apply, although the word in the last sentence or two, something that wasn't conservative got used.
Yeah. So when you think of the Orthodox rabbinate, you don't think of them giving the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
And being liberal in many kinds of ways. But here they are being liberal because the result of not being liberal is to create a real tragedy, namely having a person who is a mamzer. Okay, so let's read a little more legal material. An example.
An example is a contemporary responsum by Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, establishing the impossibility to prove mamzer status in a case where the evidence might appear to be clear-cut. The case involved the daughter of an aguna who had been married by a Haredi rabbi to a husband who subsequently converted to Christianity and refused to participate in a Jewish divorce, and had the daughter years later. The daughter had been raised as an Orthodox Jew and attended Beit Yaakov, a Haredi day school. The daughter brought up the question of her status herself prior to an impending marriage. Rabbi Yosef proceeded systematically to disqualify evidence that a prior marriage had ever taken place. The mother's evidence was immediately disqualified as an interested party. The ketubah was never found. The rabbi who performed the marriage was contacted, but Rabbi Yosef wrote that his testimony could not be accepted without the ketubah, and in any event required corroboration by two witnesses. Attempts to contact the husband were abandoned after an adversarial conversation with his new non-Jewish wife. Even if the husband could have been reached, he would only have been one witness, and his testimony could not have been accepted without a second witness. Thus, Rabbi Yosef concluded there was insufficient evidence that a valid prior marriage had ever taken place. Rabbi Yosef, sorry.
No, go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's finish.
Rabbi Yosef then proceeded to establish the possibility that the former husband might be the daughter's father. The mother testified that her former husband occasionally brought alimony payments and came for visitation in person, and hence the two were sometimes, at least momentarily, alone together. Where'd you go?
Applying.
Okay, applying an ancient rule that when a husband and wife are known to be alone together behind a closed door, the law presumes sexual intercourse may well have taken place. Rabbi Yosef concluded that it was possible that the former husband was the daughter's father, and hence Jewish law, which very strongly construes all evidence in favor of birth within marriage, had to presume that he was. Thus, Rabbi Yosef concluded that there was insufficient evidence of either a former marriage or that the new husband was the father, and hence he concluded that there was insufficient evidence of Mamzerut status. Rabbi Yosef said, "The ruling therefore must be that there is very great reason to permit this woman to marry and enter the congregation of God, and as it appears to me, have I read." Okay, couldn't make sense out of the English.
Yeah.
And as it appears to me, have I written.
Yeah, and I think I presume this is the same Rabbi Ovadia Yosef was the chief Sephardic rabbi of Israel. But yeah, it's a great example of how here I would say a rabbi avoids even what might be described as common sense to make it possible that the child not be a mamzer. I think that it's actually a great example. Can't find the ketubah, so there are no witnesses to the marriage. Therefore, there's some doubt that they were ever married in the first place. And if they were married in the first place, since they were alone at some point after their civil divorce, he might have fathered the child. So since there's doubt, we're going to rule that the child is not a mamzer. I think that's actually
Rabbi, I have a
example. Yeah,
question.
yes, go ahead.
If you are going to be divorced, if you're applying for you are applying for a divorce in a traditional Orthodox
Setting.
setting, you have to have the ketubah from your last marriage or from the marriage that you're getting divorced from?
It's a great question. I don't know the answer to the question. I suppose if both parties are willing to stipulate that they're married, that they might not need it to have a divorce. But I don't know. Ask your local Chabad rabbi. I don't know the answer to that question. Okay,
Yeah,
how many is that tonight? About 5?
It's a great story too, it's a great idea, whoops, the house burned down, honey, we're not married anymore.
Yeah, and I know, we talked about the problem of agunot, and so, there's organization in Israel, I think Alan was mentioning it, to
Rackman
address
Center.
this problem.
Yeah,
And they
right.
say you should make a mistake in your ketubah, so that if this arises, you can make the argument that you were never married in the first place. If one party or the other refuses to participate in a get, typically the husband, you can make the argument you were never married. What a mistake might be in a ketubah, have a cousin sign the ketubah as a witness, and that cousin would not be a valid witness. Alan.
The story that Bryce just read from this article, what decade or what time frame?
I think Ovadia Yosef is alive today. I mean, he's an old guy.
So it's current, it's contemporary.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Let me look at 3635.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see dates on this, but I do know that I think he was actually a member of the Knesset. So anyway, it's contemporary. Les.
If you're considered never married in the Jewish world, that doesn't cross over to like the state of California or anything, does it?
So marriages that are legal in other countries, I believe, are accepted as being legal in California. So
No,
then the question, okay, so then the question is,
right,
if you went through this whole rigmarole and a rabbi decided you didn't have a valid marriage in Israel, would you be considered married under U.S. law?
right.
Do I have my bell? I think that's number 6.
Question, Rabbi, I get to at this point is, who thought of this topic for teaching?
Oh, that I know the answer to. That's me, guilty as charged. Oh, we started talking about divorce under Jewish law, and it raises the issue of Mamzerut. And actually, I thought it would be interesting. I mean, maybe I ought to take a poll. How many of you think it's interesting? Because in kind of in the Yiddishkeit world, the term Mamzer is used a lot. And I suspect all of us who have learned to use that word really didn't know what we were talking about. So I thought this would be useful. The article's a little long, I guess I find it interesting. If you don't like digging into legal stuff like this, there's a long list of other rabbis that you can contact. Go look at the CCAR membership. I think there's 6,000 Reform rabbis, and I bet not all of them are. Okay. Conservative Judaism, Bryce.
Did we finish the other?
I think
wasn't
we did,
there a paragraph or two?
Yes.
Yeah, there's right there. Conservative Rabbi Daniel S. Nevins. No, go back up. We didn't finish. I never finished reading it.
Sorry. Yes, you're absolutely right. Sorry.
Commenting on this case, noted that the box of traditional tools Rabbi Yosef used to discredit evidence of Mamzer status may be sufficiently robust as to cover virtually all cases of inquiry in the types of situations a congregation rabbi would be likely to experience. Nonetheless, Orthodox rabbinical authorities hold that while contemporary rabbis have authority to refine procedural rules, such as rules of evidence, they do not have the authority to abolish biblically mandated categories or procedures entirely. Israeli law tries to prevent the conferring of Mamzer status by refusing to allow men other than the husband or recent ex-husband from registering a child as a child's father without a court order. However, paternity tests have the potential to reveal Mamzer status by removing the protection of the presumption of paternity on the part of a married woman's actual husband. And what's interesting about their potential, which means it hasn't happened yet.
Here's the article. So, 2007. So I'll try and make a note to take a look at that one. Number 39. Okay. Yeah, so that's and that's an Israeli news issue.
I have a question.
Hold on 1 second. Let me find our spot again.
Back up. There you go.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
And now it's conservative Judaism.
Jay.
Question. Okay. I've had this from last week and for this hour. Is there anybody sitting in here who has been called a mamzer by their parents?
I think you asked that last week.
No, I didn't ask it last week.
So
but
do you mean during the week?
I thought it. I
oh.
thought it.
Oh.
And is there anybody here who has called their kids mamzers? Now, maybe because of my age, my generation was doing this. Was there anybody else who's been doing this?
I am not going to ask anyone to embarrass themselves by that. But what I would say is that the term mamzer was a roll off the tongue pejorative like son of a bitch. Okay.
No,
I heard it a lot, and I'm
Rabbi,
not
there's a big
Jewish.
difference between son of a bitch and cute little mamzer.
I'm sorry?
If you've got a 3-year-old crawling around on the floor and he's doing really neat stuff, what
You're
a
saying
cute
it's
little
a term
mamzer.
it's a term of affection?
Yes.
Oh, that I've never heard of. Anybody
You've never heard of
experienced-
that?
I've never
No, I
I've never heard
of
it.
it. The only
Well,
role I've
Bryce.
ever heard of somebody being called a mamzer
Yeah.
is like he's a mamzer.
Okay, so hold on a second. So the question is, I just don't know. Has anyone else had the experience or know of the usage of the term mamzer as a term of
As an
affection?
expression of joy, as an
No.
expression
No,
of cuteness.
well, let me put it this way. I will not say no. I apologize for saying that. That's news to me. I've never heard that. So, yes.
Rabbi,
Amy,
maybe.
hold on a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Amy.
No, I haven't heard that, but I can imagine that as a from the Yiddish as a term of endearment from a different context.
Did you grow up in a
Yes. But I
Yiddish?
haven't
Hold
heard
on a
that.
second. Did you grow up in a Yiddishkeit environment?
My father spoke Yiddish. I mean, I wasn't.
Okay.
I've never been
Because
called
my
that.
understanding of the term mamzer is kind of like the way Bryce put it, is there's nothing cute or sweet about it.
Right. No, I just said I could imagine.
Equivalent to bastard. Now, I suppose you might have a little kid crawling and
Yeah.
he puts on a cute hat and you say, oh, look at that little bastard. But
Yeah.
that doesn't sound right to me in English or in Yiddish. Alan and then Les.
So this subject relates to the general acceptance in Israel and why some Israelis leave the country to get married so that their marriage will get recognized by the state of Israel because they don't want to, or they don't want to be married by an Orthodox rabbi, by the rabbinate. So if the situation that we're discussing applies to the couple, where they leave the country and they get a civil marriage, the intent is to recognize their marriage for all their legal reasons in Israel, but their child, based on the technical definition of mamzer, does the state of Israel investigate this enough to create this problem for this kid if they've left the country to become married away?
So that's number 7 on the hit parade. But what I would guess is, given with what we've read, is I can't imagine that the state of Israel has any interest in Mamzerut. Mamzerut applies when this kid goes to get married and is in the Orthodox world, is going to have a Jewish wedding with a rabbi. And he says, oh, by the way, technically I'm a Mamzer. And so then the rabbi would do an investigation, and under the terms or the influence of what we've just read, my guess is the rabbi would find reason not to pronounce the child a rabbi. But my
The
knowledge
whole-
of the state of Israel is these are clerks, they're not rabbis. So the only issue would arise on the question of a divorce. If the couple decide to split up in Israel and get a divorce, would they, would they be required to get a get, or would the Orthodox say you were never married in the first place? I'm gonna mute.
I think you're right in that the process of getting married by not dealing with the rabbinate out of the country is, however, the rabbinate is the one that basically gives the nod that says, okay, we'll treat you as married, even though it wasn't
Yes, but there's two issues. The rabbinate is saying we'll treat you as married under Jewish law. The
right.
state of Israel will say we'll treat you as married under Israeli law. And they're not the same. Two
Right.
Christians getting married are treated as married under Israeli law, certainly
yeah,
not under
Christians-
Jewish law.
Christians and Muslims are different, but what you're saying is there is another category in Israeli Jewish prudence, if I can think of a better word, where when they come back in the country, they're not recognized by the rabbinate as having been married.
Well, what I think is true, but I'm not certain, is that you register your marriage in Israel. So under Israeli law, you're considered married. Now, the question is, does that have any status under Jewish law? And I think the answer is no, because it might be a Jew and a non-Jew. You can register to be married.
Okay.
Okay, that's my understanding. Les.
Two quick things. Answering what Alan just said, if they don't have a ketubah and being married under Jewish, circumstances, the Jewish community in Israel would not accept them as married because there's no ketubah. Is that fair to say?
I think it's fair to say, but I don't think it's correct to say, because the issue is, I think under Jewish law, if they live together, they could be considered to be married under Jewish law, where the rabbis are going out of their way to assume that there was never a marriage, involved the status of the child as a mamzer.
But you were saying earlier that the rabbis could say, "Oh, if we don't find a ketubah, they were never married."
No,
So it's
the
kind
article,
of yeah.
no, I didn't say that.
You did, but the article.
The article said in establishing whether this young
Gotcha.
woman was a mamzer or not, the rabbi was determined to find reasons to declare her not a mamzer, and found a technicality that said, I can't find a ketubah, therefore I'm going to presume that there was never a marriage. Whether that would apply to two ordinary Jews, I doubt, but I don't know. Number 8. Number 10.
The other thing I was going to say is when Jay said about mamzer, is sometimes you call a little child, what a little monster. And maybe if Jay had heard that, it would be, what a little mamzer.
I've just never heard that. And for me,
I haven't either, but I'm just saying Jay had heard
the term mamzer is so negative.
Well, monster's pretty negative too, if you think about it.
No, I don't agree. They have monster trucks. You have kids play monster.
But you have two monsters that are.
No. I look. I'm with you. I'm not trying to be unreasonable, even though it is part of my professional role to be unreasonable. But I've just never heard that. And for me, and I spent every summer of my life in the Catskills between age 4 and age 21. So I was exposed to a lot of Yiddishkeit. I've never heard the word mamzer used in an affectionate way. Bryce, I don't know if you're
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that best way I could this is my understanding, and maybe it'll help less. Sometimes when you think of a judge, you think of a judge as being like an umpire, and he's going to call the balls and strikes fairly as he sees them. Whether inside the plate, outside wherever it is, I'm going to call it. But that's not what's happening here. What's happening? The rabbi's not calling balls and strikes. He's decided he's going to walk this guy, and that's the end of it.
Gotcha.
Well, and the way I would put it is the way I put it before, is that the rabbi is also a representative of God, and God is both just and merciful. So if the rabbi can find a way to be merciful that's consistent with the rabbi's role as representing God in the process of being a dayan, a judge. Okay, so this was interesting. Well, it's interesting to me. So, you know, if it's
And
not-
It's
I
a great
did-
debate.
I did write the head of the CCAR responsive committee to ask the question about DNA.
okay, did you search in the response?
Well, I've tried to search the responsive, but they don't have a topic that just says DNA.
Yeah,
So
yeah. The search engine for the responsa, I actually have every volume of responsa over there ever published by the CCAR. Won't surprise you to learn this is something I'm really interested in. Yeah, it's a great. But what I would say is you will get a quick answer, not interested, because the Reformed tradition doesn't recognize on Mamzerut. So it's an irrelevant question from the Reform perspective. It would be very interesting from the conservative perspective. I think.
I'm sure I could write a few other entities
And
get
I'm
their
happy
perspective.
and delighted, and I have to say proud to say that I have a really good friend named Elliot Dorff, who is the chairman of the law committee or in conservative Judaism, unless he's retired. So he is brilliant on these subjects.
I've heard him teach. Exactly. I agree with you. I've heard him teach.
Okay, gang. Well, this was fun. We'll continue next time, and God knows when we'll finish this. You cute little group of Mamzers. Thank you, Jay.
Improving Jay's point.
I was just thinking, I wouldn't call the kid a cute little Mamzer in front of his mother.
Yeah.
If
Especially
she
in front of his
wasn't
mother.
Jewish, you might.
Yeah, I mean, it's it reminds me, and I always kind of think about this. If a parent calls the child, the kid, a son of a bitch, that's a terrible statement.
Yeah.
About either the father or the mother of the child.
I agree.
Well, also mother calling the kid a bastard is a really weird thing.
Yes. Yep.
So if you have time for a story and you don't tell me you don't, this has to do with a scenario where the couple was determined to not be married. Can I tell you that story, or should we?
If it's reasonably short.
We'll try to make it short. This is from Rabbi Uri Regev, who is head of an organization called Hadush, Religion and State. So he's championing separation in a way that that people can do things civilly. So he tells me this story over dinner last year that that the Orthodox rabbinate gets suspicious that converted members don't follow through and have their Jewish practice to the rabbinate's satisfaction. And so when this couple tries to get divorced, whether there was a get or not isn't the issue. The issue is the investigation determines, I'm going to say the mother, but I'm not 100% sure. I think it's the mother, is determined to not having kept a Shabbat properly and on other things. The issue is that the mother is asking for property settlement, which under Jewish practice, the father owns all that stuff. The mother gets almost nothing in a divorce. And so as this unfolded, even though they'd been married, by my definition, married 20 years, they determined that they were never married. And because they were never married, the civil court recognizes that the property separation was legitimate and the mother got property.
The civil court in Israel?
It's not exactly a civil court, but the problem is that it's a court that.
So what you're saying is it's kind of a switch at the end. What you're saying was she was not an agonah.
She was, yeah, that's right.
And
because
they were living together, but they were not technically married. And so there's some kind of community property implied, if I'm understanding.
That's right. So they were able to get community property because the rabbinate determined they were not practicing Judaism the way they.
So that opens up actually another question, which is another interesting one, which is relating to conversion. And maybe we're talking about that on Wednesday. I don't think we're getting into details of conversion. Which is, I mean, if you're born Jewish, as I was saying before, you can't get out. You're Jewish. If you're converted to Judaism, again, my understanding of Jewish law is if you're converted as a child, when you become an adult, and I think that date is somewhat flexible, clearly somewhere between 12 and 21 or so, you have a one-time opportunity to reject your conversion, since you, being a child, really didn't have the ability to accept it. But my understanding, again, under Jewish law, is that once you're converted, you can't get out. But what has recently been happening in Israel is the rabbis have become more and more stringent on what is a valid conversion. And there's a lot of controversy about this in Israel in particular, where the rabbis are insisting that a convert actually, now, of course, the only rabbis recognized in Israel for conversion are Orthodox.
No, that's not true.
Yeah, it's not true. It's not true. But let's just say it's an Orthodox conversion. What the rabbis are saying is, if you haven't practiced Jewish law, your conversion was never authentic, and
That's
so
right.
therefore are retroactively canceling conversions. To my knowledge, this is a new phenomenon. New maybe the last 10 or 15 years.
It applied to this couple that Rabbi Regev was telling me the story, though. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, Henry.
Yeah, next Monday is Memorial Day. We're still on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll plan to meet. Thank you for raising that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Rabbi,
when you're
yes.
retired, every day is Blur's Day.
Rabbi,
Every day is Blur's Day. I love it.
if a Reform rabbi does a conversion to Judaism here in the United States and they go to Israel, will they be considered Jewish?
Yes.
Because it wasn't an Orthodox?
Yes. The answer is yes.
They have a term called recognized. I'm sorry if I cut you off, Rabbi.
No.
Recognized authorized entity. So conservative and reform rabbis are recognized for this purpose. It gets gray
outside of Israel only, not inside Israel.
Only outside of Israel, but they're this recognized authority, an authorized. Yeah, go ahead. That's all right. Enough.
So let me be precise. I'm pretty sure that if someone is converted outside of Israel, they are not recognized by the Orthodox rabbinate inside of Israel. But they are, hold on, let me finish. But they are recognized for purposes of the law of return as being Jewish by the state of Israel, if you understand the difference.
Good point.
I am virtually certain about that.
I think that's right.
Because the question is, can you be recognized for automatic citizenship? And there, if your conversion is, I think, or marriage for that matter, is in the context of a recognized community.
That's the word. That's the word.
I actually was participating in a Beit Din for someone who was converting in Israel, but for some reason, this was during COVID, and it gets a little complicated. There was an Israeli rabbi involved in this, or an Israeli Reform rabbi, and two of us in the U.S. Participating in a Beit Din for conversion. And the Israeli rabbi, Reform rabbi, one of our colleagues, vetoed it because she said, I can't and I wouldn't say, even if I could remember. She vetoed it because she said, this individual is not part of a recognized congregation for purposes of her conversion. And the negotiations between the Reform rabbinate and the Orthodox rabbinate in Israel for any purposes are so sensitive that the Reform rabbinate really stick to the letter of their agreement. So what I always say, and this is important for Cindy, for Bethany, Bethany's still there, for Henry. So converting under the auspices of Reform Judaism or conservative Judaism, your conversion would not be recognized by the Orthodox rabbinate anywhere, but certainly not in Israel. But under current law, you would be recognized as Jewish from the perspective of being eligible for automatic citizenship in Israel. Now, there has been, before October 7th, a hot issue in Israel was whether the government of Israel was going to change that rule to have automatic citizenship only granted to people who are considered to be Jewish by Orthodox standards. But I don't think that's been changed. Alan.
In 2021, the way I understand it, the court, not necessarily the rabbinate, but the court, well, I'm not sure about that part, authorized that conversions are legal for non-Orthodox rabbis. And therefore, this became questionable during the judiciary reform that it might be undone. But if that law in 2021 is in effect, two people can be converted in Israel, and that's a popular thing at my temple in Tel Aviv at Beit Daniel. They get huge amounts of conversions, but the rabbinate, that it would never be a question, because these people don't want an Orthodox rabbi to conduct their weddings and funerals anyway.
So I think I can answer it. They would be recognized as Jewish by the state of Israel in every area where that applies. And one area would be law of return. I don't know other areas where it would apply, but they would not be recognized by the rabbinate, the Orthodox rabbinate in the state of Israel. So a person converting at Beit Daniel, going to marry another Jew in Israel by an Orthodox rabbi would not be accepted as Jewish.
Right. These are talking a story about two Israelis who were not Jewish become Jewish. It's not even about law of return. They're already Israeli citizens, right? You know.
Yes.
The rabbinate is off on the side, but the rabbinate.
Yeah. So the question is, they become Jewish. Again, I would be very surprised if they didn't do it in an Orthodox auspices. I'm sure the Orthodox rabbinate wouldn't accept it. There used to be a time when on your identity card in Israel, your religion was stated. That no longer is true. I am led to understand. I've seen identity cards of Israelis that don't have their religion on it. So I don't know for what purposes that makes a difference. In May, I just plain don't know. Okay, that's number 9. I'm going to go out before it's number 10. So I'm going to stop. Oh, stop sharing. I forgot to do that. So yeah, Cheryl, you posted a.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking through the conservative database.
Yes.
and-
So that's the
and
conservative
They
database.
really do not have much up-to-date stuff. I mean, a lot of this stuff comes from the 1990s, very
Okay.
early 2000s.
Yeah. Well,
And
we're
so,
doing. We are doing well. Okay. Yeah. So that.
yeah, so I've just written them at their website to ask them that question.
Yep.
That a Jewish woman finds out through DNA.
Yeah,
see if
and
it-
actually, it's an interesting question. I actually don't think, with all due respect to you, Cheryl, that questions from lay people are taken up by responsa committee. I could be wrong about that,
Yeah.
but I'm not familiar with any case where that would be true. So the answer is they would tell you to go to your rabbi and ask the question, and the rabbi might have, the responsa and be able to answer the question. Or
Cheryl,
they would submit it.
when you get your DNA answer from the CCAR, if you don't want to tell the group, I'd be interested in what, Rabbi Mike is probably right. They're going to dismiss it because it's not directly
I
relevant.
will give you a case which was actually submitted by my rabbi, Alan Greenbaum. Okay, hold on to your key pause. My father married my mother-in-law.
Oh, that's a great story.
So they're both there. My mother and my father-in-law died, and they knew each other and they had grandchildren in common. So they got married. And jokingly, I asked Alan Greenbaum, my rabbi, so now my wife became my stepsister. Everybody with me on this so far?
Yeah,
My kids started calling me Uncle Daddy, and we had a grand old time. So I asked my rabbi, never thinking he would take it seriously, whether the marriage between me and my wife was now a forbidden marriage, and whether we would have to get a divorce and so on. And he submitted it to the responsa committee. So
Wow.
I have it's a very short response, and apparently it did come up in medieval times, and it was very clear that the answer was no problem.
So how
you-
long you been
but didn't-
divorced?
Sorry?
How long you been divorced? You said that. I'm joking. You asked him if you had to be divorced because you married your.
Yeah,
Well,
that's all
yeah.
the
So,
joke.
so,
I
so
thought
once
the
they got
joke had
married,
to-
the question was, does
Yeah.
that affect the status of our marriage and our relationship in the, in all senses of that word?
I just thought he was, I just thought the point was that he was reminding you that you were married so long ago that it's medieval times, and he's just
Okay, that's
reminding you.
possible too, yes.
What,
Well,
Rabbi,
well, let's say that happened prior to you being married. Would you then have been able to marry your wife at that time?
I actually think, that would be something to look up. I'm not sure about that.
Oh,
No.
number 10.
But I have
Rabbi,
to tell you, as a Reform rabbi, I don't check that stuff. I once was working with a couple toward their marriage, and the bride, it was a middle-aged couple. The bride was from the Netherlands, and she was divorced. She was married, Jewish woman, married, had a Jewish divorce at get, and she was very insistent upon wanting to show me the get and show me maybe it was a conversion certificate or something. And my attitude was basically, I believe you, you don't have to show me this. And she did not continue to use me as her rabbi because it's a reasonable position. She disrespected the fact that I was not checking, which I found sort of interesting sociologically.
Rabbi, didn't you write a poem or a parody based on this? Your mother.
So, but I probably should have.
You-
No,
oh,
but
I-
there's an
no, I
old song,
remember-
"I'm My Own Grandpa," which
Yeah,
I
you've
encourage.
heard that song, haven't you, Rabbi?
Yeah, yes.
Oh, I
That's funny.
remember that.
No, I don't think I have, but
Oh, you haven't heard of My Own Grandpa?
no, I
It's a good
have
song.
heard of that. I
Yeah,
didn't
oh,
write a
okay.
song or a parody.
Yeah.
Saying Uncle Daddy.
Yeah, it's too difficult to write a parody about a song that's a parody.
Well, I
Right.
wouldn't write it about that song, but anyway, okay. So I'm turning 76 next week.
Oh,
And
lots of
so
stuff.
it occurred to me I need to write a parody, 76
you a
years
trombone.
old, it's a long parade.
What about
I'll
76
buy you a
trombones?
trombone.
It's
Sorry,
trombone.
yeah, that's right. I said I was going to buy a trombone, and the person I said it to didn't get it. So anyway, thank you
What's
all for
Wednesday
your
night?
All
What's
right.
your topic? Wednesday night?
Wednesday night. I think it's Who is a Jew? Let me take a quick look.
And thank you for the
who is
email,
a
by the
Jew?
way.
And the question, interesting article in Moment magazine, which is, can you be disqualified from being a Jew? We just talked about it, and like everything else, it's more complicated than you think.
Well, we promise we'll be a little nicer to you than we were tonight, forcing you to say no so many times. We'll be nicer to you.
None of you called me a Mamzer, either, delicately or hostilely. So I
Well, you're not
consider-
that cute.
I understand that. I can live with that. I can live with that.
You didn't hear someone say when you were starting to talk, let the Mamzer speak? You didn't hear that?
No, I didn't. I have selective hearing. Hear no evil, see no evil. Speak no evil.
All right, Rabbi, we'll see you Wednesday.
Okay, we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
You're
Good
welcome.
night.
Bye-bye, everybody.